Well, hello there, true sleuths and horror hounds. I'm your host, True Horror Stories, and today we're gonna get into the very first installment of 80's Cinema Carnage. Now, the point of these series of videos is that I review 80's horror films, and hopefully there'll be some that you've never seen. I definitely haven't, so this is gonna be pretty fun giving my spin on each specific one. In the debut episode of this series, we're gonna go over a movie called Pin that came out in 1988. Now, if you, like me, grew up with Blockbuster video stores, you would know that whenever you go in, or at least in my case, you'd pick what you wanted to watch based on the art at the front of the box. Whatever looked the coolest and whatever was the most interesting is what you would pick to rent for that particular trip. With that in mind, let's go ahead and take a look at the cover art for Pin. Now, on this particular cover photo, we can see somebody sitting in a wheelchair at the top of a set of stairs that is increasingly larger as it gets towards the bottom, seemingly to put you at the bottom of the staircase looking up. And there's blood trailing all the way down each step. This one has something that's pretty typical where they have some sort of text at the front that will grab your attention, and in this particular one, it is as follows. Is Pin alive? Leon knows, but nobody believes him. And again, in like a lot of movies, there's a tagline that reads, "A journey beyond the edge of fear and madness." Ooh. Though I still usually pick videos because of their cover art, there is also a summary on the back of most of these videos that gives you kind of an idea of what it's gonna entail. This one reads as follows. Isolated by his strange parents, Leon finds solace in an imaginary friend, which happens to be an anatomy doll from his father's doctor's office. Unfortunately, the doll begins to take over Leon's life and his sister's life as well. An imaginary friend that's an anatomy doll that starts committing murder. I am interested and very much creeped out by that concept. Before we get into the fun stuff of reviewing this particular movie, I want to play a little game called Stupid Rotten Tomatoes Comments. The first comment I'm gonna read that's really freaking stupid is from Riff J and is a 1.5 star rating that says the following. 2 80's for me, not scary at all, bad acting, etc. The son is such a douche, he just needs one good ass kicking to set him straight. It's tough to get through because his acting is so bad, among others. Feels too much like a made-for-TV movie. Hey, I'm stupid. Come here. It's an 80's movie. Of course it's gonna be cheesy. Holy shit. Our next stupid comment is a 1-star rating from Laura S. The worst movie I've ever seen. Watch Maximum Overdrive. I think that'll change real quick. Am I right or am I right? Our last comment comes from Lisa S. with a 2.5 star rating, and the stupidity in this post made me roll my eyes so fucking hard I got a headache. Holy shit. But here we go, this is what it says. This movie wasn't scary at all. It didn't even creep me out, not even at the end. I found it to be predictable and a lot like some other movies I've seen. It really is a good movie to teach people how not to parent. Do not give your kids advice by having them talk to a doll. That just messes them up. I would not wish such unbalanced parents on any kid. Overall, this movie just didn't grab me. Sir or ma'am, did you not have a fucking childhood? I certainly talked to dolls all the time. I mean, there were G.I. Joes, there were Barbie dolls, there were Bratz dolls. What kind of household did you grow up in? Holy shit! Alright, I think I've had enough stupid for the time being. Grab your 3D glasses, turn the lights off, turn the volume up, and let's dive into this 80's Cinema Carnage. Let's fucking go! Before I get into the review of this movie, I want to make one thing very clear. This is a slow car crash of what the fuckery, from beginning to about midway. And holy shit, there are some things that happen in the first 20 minutes that will have you bugging out, because I certainly was. The movie starts innocently enough with 4 young boys sitting outside of a mansion staring up at a second floor window where something or someone is looking out on the premises. They start going back and forth on what or who exactly could be at the window because they hadn't moved for over an hour, and they eventually settle on, well, maybe it's a dummy. 2 of the boys start going back and forth playing the I dare you, no I dare you, nuh-uh, no you game. One of the boys finally gives in and climbs up to the second-story balcony so that he can look into the window, and immediately is met with a weird, whispery voice out of nowhere that causes him and all of the boys to run the fuck away. We then flash back 15 years, and this is where the fuckery begins. We're introduced to the family that is the center of this movie, and you can tell from the jump that they are absolutely nutter butters. We pan through the home and see that all of the furniture is covered in plastic wrapping. We see the 2 children, Leon and Ursula, standing on top of these little step stools that 1 have their name and 2 have little pictures of where their feet are supposed to go. Once they are done eating, they pick the stools up and walk out, only for their mother to come up immediately with a vacuum and clean that area up. And then we meet the father, who made me have PTSD flashbacks to basic training, with the kids coming in, standing at parade fucking rest, and calling him sir instead of dad or father. He asks them some mathematical questions, one that is not so hard for Ursula, while the other one was extremely difficult for Leon, and he got chastised for getting it wrong. Again, this is a slow car crash of a movie, so it's just gonna get worse from here. We skip forward a little in the next scene too, where the father is evaluating a child in his pediatric office and speaking with the very thing that the movie is named after, an anatomy doll called Pin. Now, there were some jokes thrown back and forth between the conversation between the father and Pin about Pin being naked, and the children took exception to that, waiting until the father was gone to go talk to Pin. The father comes back and notices them talking to Pin, which they're not supposed to do because he doesn't like anybody talking to the anatomy doll without him being there, and stops them. We skip forward a little bit to where the kids are preteens at this point, and we see Leon in his room working on what looks like an RC car before his mother starts calling for him to come downstairs pretty adamantly. Once he's down the stairs, she chastises him for leaving dirt on the carpet and tells him that his friend is too dirty and diseased to come back. Leon, not liking this at all, gives a snarky comment back saying that his mother should sanitize his friends at the door, to which he receives a big ol' smack on the face. Leon, rightfully so, leaves the house in a pretty big hurry while his mother is screaming at him that he made her do it. The next scene has Leon walking around on his own after being smacked by his mother, still visibly upset, and he runs into 2 boys. It's in this scene that we get a little taste of how fucked up society was, viewpoint-wise, in this period of time when one of the boys throws a soccer ball at Leon and blatantly says the F slur. I rewound the scene multiple times and watched it in different speeds in order to verify that that was actually what was being said, and I'm pretty sure that is exactly what was said. If you don't believe me, you can look at it yourself and tell me what you think. The next scene is where I literally go into absolute what the fuck I can't even mode. And that is when Leon shows up at his father's office after his father has left so that he could talk to Pin. While he's talking to Pin about the situation that's going on, one of the nurses comes in and he has to hide behind one of the screens that blocks people off from seeing you if you're naked. And while he is hiding, the creep factor goes absolutely through the fucking roof, with the nurse literally touching the doll as if it were real, bringing it over to the table where patients would sit and fucking the doll, with Leon watching. His face literally just encapsulates how I was feeling in that particular moment of absolute what the fuckery. just get worse from here. We don't know very much about Ursula, the little sister at this point, but we get to know her a little more and get so much foreshadowing off the very next scene. It's apparently her birthday, and she gets a big gift from Pin that is a dancing music box, which Leon seems to like a lot more than Ursula. While he's admiring this gift, she's looking at a pair of tits in a porno mag that her friend stole from her friend's brother. Their short conversation ends with Leon saying he'd love Pin to come live with them, and Ursula saying Dad would never let that happen, to which Leon does this.
Fist dummy.
Don't you ever!
Ursula gets up and tries to leave the room in a hurry, with Leon not far behind her, ready to snack her up again, and find their mother standing right outside of the door. To which she asks why Ursula is even in that room and finds the porno mag, which eventually gets to their father. In response to this, he has them talk to Pin about the birds and the bees, and this is one of the most uncomfortable things I've ever seen, with the doll going from talking about the birds and the bees to wanting Leon to take the sheet off of his lap so that he could talk about male genitalia. He hesitates, and then we once again get some more foreshadowing on Ursula with this.
I'll do it.
We then have the two kids alone in the next scene, with Leon playing with his RC car and Ursula talking about whether or not their parents have sex. And then she goes ahead and makes a comment about whether or not their mother cleans their father's dick with spick and span before they have sex. To which they giggle like crazy at, and it shows their warped sense of humor. We skip forward a few years, and it looks like Ursula and Leon are in high school at this point. This is also where we get the payoff to the foreshadowing from the previous set of scenes about Ursula. We see there's this big party going on, and everybody's in full-blown 80s mode with the big hair, the makeup, the jean jackets, everything. Leon comes walking up looking like he came from a corporate business meeting, sticking out like a fucking sore thumb among everybody, and finds three guys standing in his locker. They pass by him in the hall, and Leon finds this beautiful gem written on his locker. Fucking assholes. Leon goes into a justifiable tizzy after this and goes looking for his sister, starting with going into the party that's been going on to find Marcia, the friend that stole the porno mag from earlier. Leon finds out by asking her where his sister is that she was seen last dancing with another boy and then took off. Just before he leaves to go find his sister, Marcia asks him to dance, and we get to see this weird dynamic where she's totally into him, but he has no interest in her whatsoever. We cut outside to where Leon is seeing a vehicle moving back and forth pretty quickly in an odd way, with the windows all fogged up, kinda like the fucking Titanic. He goes over and wipes off the mist a little bit to see that his sister's getting absolutely railed by the guy Marcia told him she was dancing with earlier. Leon goes absolutely fucking nuts, pulls the guy off of his sister and out of the car, and takes him to Dick Kick City before he's actually pulled back and restrained. We then see Leon and Ursula driving back home, and Ursula's literally in tears, completely freaked out and ashamed of herself, with Leon giving her the third degree about how many guys she's fucked and telling her he doesn't want to have a tramp for a sister. Listening to this and watching this, my eyebrow was twitching so fucking much, and I got such a headache because I literally wanted to smack the shit out of this character for being such a dick. And then the cherry on the top of the what the fuck Sunday happened. We see Ursula coming out of the house, going past their parents who completely ignore her, and down the hill to where Leon is sitting. She goes and sits down with him and tells him that she thinks she's pregnant and that she'd skipped the last 2 periods, to which Leon says that she needs to get an abortion, and this is literally my response to this video as it played. If you really want to know how I felt, take a listen. No. No! No! You got fucking... I can't. Nope. Nope. After resisting for quite a while and agreeing to go talk to Pin about the situation, we have Ursula and Leon sneak into their father's office once again and ask Pin what he thought of the situation. The scene was creepy, as pretty much the entirety of this video is so far, and there was one particular comment Ursula made that I didn't catch on to what exactly was happening until I saw the rest of the movie, and it's this.
When did you learn how to do that?
After this, we get to a scene that I believe is the climax of this movie, because it goes from this creepy factor to what is supposed to be the actual horror of the movie. In the next scene, we see the father chastising Leon for not obeying his orders and filling out applications for college, to which Leon shows a serious resistance to. During this, the father is getting ready for a speech that he's giving and forgets the case studies after leaving the house. The mother reminds him of forgetting these things, and he immediately turns around and goes to his office to go pick them up, finding Leon there talking to Pin. The dad looks visibly shaken at this point and tells Leon to leave without his mother seeing, and directly after that, he seems to have some sort of mental breakdown while staring at Pin, to the point where he grabs the doll, covers it in a sheet, and throws it in the back of the car with the intent to give it up to the medical society because he doesn't want it anymore for whatever reason. Leon overhears this, and this is where some of the weirder shit starts to happen. While going back towards the conference after getting the stuff from the office, we see the mother and father start to get extremely anxious with Pin in the car, and Pin progressively sits up somehow, and the sheet comes off. I'm not sure exactly how, I don't think we ever find out, but what happens is the parents start to get more frantic, with the father driving at top speeds in the most dangerous manner. That results in them flipping the car and both of them dying in the accident, with Pin being left the only one intact.
Gotcha, bitch!
The next antagonist, I guess you can say, we meet after the funeral in the next scene, and that is their aunt, their mother's sister, who begins to suggest that she moves in and later insists upon doing so, even though Leon makes a concerted effort to convince her not to do so. We see a little bit of happiness with the two siblings when they come back inside of the house alone and start taking off all of the plastic covers and eating whatever they want, pizza, burgers, the whole 9 yards, and talking about starting to cook for themselves. This is then immediately followed up with a very, very uncomfortable scene where Ursula finds that Leon brought Pin into the house and plans on keeping him there. Leon then reacts to her being upset about this in this very troubling manner.
What do you think would happen to Pin if I didn't bring him home? He'd probably locked in some closet or killed. He's family. More than any stupid Aunt Dorothy. I want him here.
I don't know about you, but after watching this scene and listening to exactly what Leon says, it troubles me that he sees Pin as a living, breathing human being. He then says that he's gonna put Pin up in the attic so that the aunt cannot see him, and makes a very troubling promise that their aunt would not be there very long because she would quote-unquote feel the vibrations and know that she was not wanted there. And oh boy, did he deliver on that promise. We see just how much Leon resents his aunt when they are sitting at the dinner table together in the very next scene, and Ursula states that she got a part-time job at the library, to which Leon did not like whatsoever, because apparently he does not like change and he doesn't want her to work. He just wants her to be with him all the time. We then see a very quick conversation between Leon and Pin before he comes downstairs and promises he's gonna make up with their aunt to Ursula whilst giving her a milkshake. Leon fulfills his promise apparently when we have the next scene of the aunt sleeping and she wakes up to the sound of Pin's voice talking to her. This little altercation ends with her seeing that Pin's behind her and then freaking out to the point where she has a heart attack and dies, with Leon popping up from the other side of the bed, having apparently had something to do with this particular death. And then we find out why exactly Leon gave Ursula a milkshake. She was drugged with some sort of sleeping medication so she doesn't hear anything that's going on when the aunt is screaming for help and banging on the door. Now there is nothing standing between Leon, Pin, and Ursula at this point besides her job. She comes home one night to find that Leon has dressed up Pin in their father's suit and painted them to look exactly like Leon, complete with blonde wig and all. Ursula is justifiably very much uncomfortable with this, especially when Leon puts Pin at the father's seat at the table while they're having dinner, to which Ursula completely rebels and runs upstairs saying she will not eat with Pin being in the room. After a very violent confrontation with Leon, Ursula convinces him that Pin should not be at the table with them while they eat, or else she cannot be at the table while they eat. We then see the next main character come into play, and that is the love interest for Ursula, Stan. When Ursula next tells Leon about it, he seems completely aloof, but when he runs into them while they're walking together, he seems very, very disheveled and upset about the situation, and that she's gonna go out on a date with Stan instead of having dinner with him. We get a tiny bit of fresh air when we get to see the dinner date that Ursula and Stan go on. And that immediately crashes and burns with the response Leon has when she comes home at midnight. While Ursula seems very ecstatic about how well the date has gone and says she's gonna go on a date with Stan again, Leon is losing his shit and telling her how bad of a person Stan is for keeping her out until midnight when she has to work the next day. This is where I really started to question exactly what's going on between the two, and I was not surprised when I figured out exactly why later. We see Leon apologize to her again, like he's done time after time after time again, which she accepts, and then it skips to another date between her and Stan where she gives him a watch that has an alarm on it and beeps at the top of every hour. While this is going on, we're seeing the opposing side where Leon has asked Marcia out for a date, and oh lord, is it the complete opposite of what is happening with the other couple. She's absolutely excited to just foam the shit out of him, and he's just not having it at all. Once she comes home with him to do the thing that he apparently wanted to do when he called her out on a date, he freezes up and starts hearing Pin talking to him in another room. He just completely shuts down, and she decides she's gonna go home. Everything after this is going into complete spoiler territory, and if you do not want the ending of this movie ruined, I highly suggest you click off now. Leon leaves the room while Marcia is getting redressed, and once he gets downstairs, he grabs her jacket from the coat hanger by the door, turns the lights off, and takes the jacket into the room where Pin is left to drape it over the couch, so that when Marcia comes back down, she has to go into that room. When she does go into that room, she is confronted by Pin in a wheelchair. And holy shit, this is just so fucked up because he's chasing her around the house in the wheelchair and she's desperately screaming and crying in hysterics to get out, but she's trapped in there due to the doors being locked. Before Leon could complete any disgusting plan he had in his head, Ursula gets home and completely cuts it short. Though we didn't know this previously, Ursula points out to Marcia that the chair where Pin is sitting is being controlled remotely by Leon, which goes back to the several scenes of him as a kid messing around with RC cars. Right after this, we see the same fucking pattern between Leon and Ursula that we've been seeing the entire fucking movie. When she comes into the kitchen, absolutely pissed about the prior night, Leon tries to smooth things over by suggesting that they have dinner at their house with Stan. And rightly so, Ursula is very, very resistant to this because she definitely does not want Stan meeting Pin yet. I don't think she wants anybody to meet Pin, and I don't blame her. It takes a little bit of coaxing from Leon to actually get her to agree to this particular arrangement, even though Leon absolutely goes back on it when that day actually comes about. Stan shows up in the next scene with a box of chocolates in his hand that's obviously for Ursula, but Leon, being the absolute psychopath that he is, takes them from him and says, "Oh, Pin likes chocolates, thank you very much." Even though Stan obviously doesn't know that Pin likes chocolates. Leon then breaks the promise he made to Ursula in order for Stan to come over and introduces him to Pin, which is the most awkward conversation I've ever seen because Stan is desperately trying to make this work and Ursula comes in looking all kinds of pissed off. We go to them eating dinner and Stan and Ursula are having beautiful chemistry, just talking back and forth and laughing while we see exactly what Leon feels about this situation with him just staring at them, completely pissed about the situation, completely stone-faced, like he just doesn't want to be there, he doesn't want anything to do with this. Stan, being the good guy he is, tries to smooth this over and suggests that he hear some of Leon's poetry, which Leon had expressed to Ursula earlier he wanted to do as his trade. Leon agrees and they go into the living room where he starts to read off the most disgusting fucking poetry stanza I have ever heard, and I kid you not, I skipped this scene the first time around because I couldn't handle how fucking cringy it was. And I'll tell you what, it's extremely enlightening with how fucked up it is, and now we finally get a look into why Leon is so pissed about losing Ursula in any way, shape, or form. I'm not really gonna go over exactly what he says, but I'm gonna go ahead and let Stan in this particular scene explain it for you.
I can't do that.
You have to. He really believes that thing is a person. Doesn't he realize he's using ventriloquism?
He's not hurting anyone. He can just go on living here and writing his poetry.
Poetry is sick. He's talking about rape.
It's just a poem.
We very clearly see Leon overhear this and play when he comes in that he didn't, like nothing is happening, and the night ends at that point. We see a short scene of Leon talking to Pin about the situation like he's done with anything that's been serious whatsoever, and then we cut to the next morning with Leon chopping wood. We get another bit of insight into Leon's feelings about Ursula dating Stan, because while he's chopping the wood, he suggests to Ursula that she doesn't see him anymore because he doesn't like him. Ursula says, "Fuck you, I like him, I'm gonna see him tonight," and Leon goes from chopping the wood in one swing to not being able to get even halfway through this one particular log at this point in time. Once again, he absolutely lies through his teeth and says that he does like Stan just to smooth things over with Ursula so she doesn't absolutely cut him out of her life. We see that Leon's completely lost his mind when he calls Stan in the next scene, convincing him to come over and talk about throwing a party for Ursula as a surprise. With how much we've seen Stan fall in love with Ursula, he agrees and comes over, Ursula having no idea what's going on. Stan shows up in the next scene and is literally guilted by Leon into having a drink with him, which Leon immediately drugs with sleeping meds like he did with Ursula before the aunt was killed. As the sleeping meds kick in and Stan starts to get more lethargic, Leon decides, stupidly, that he's gonna go ahead and go on a fucking psychotic monologue. I swear to the gods, I literally want to punch him in the face and take him to Dick Kick City because of how fucking egotistical he is in this particular part. He goes on and on like an egotistical prick about, oh, you're trying to take Ursula away from us, you wanted to put me in a mental institution, you only love her for her money, yada 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 yada. Shit hits the fan when Leon realizes that he didn't give Stan enough of the medication, and Stan starts to stand up to get out. When Stan gets up after realizing what the hell is going on and that he's been drugged by Leon, Leon freaks the fuck out, and his alter ego Pin decides to tell him, you need to kill this guy, you need to quiet him up because Ursula's gonna find out and she's gonna leave us. The first time he jumps on Stan to try and keep him from getting out, he gets thrown off like a ragdoll because Stan is the big, strong jock dude, and Leon is this flimsy little nerd that doesn't have any muscle mass to him. Leon gets more hysterical about the situation, and when Stan falls over because of the side effects of the medication, Leon gets on top of him, grabs a statue of some sort, and starts beating him over the head with it. And at this point, I legitimately thought that Stan was dead. There's this nasty blood stain on the floor from the gaping wound on Stan's head. Leon decides he's gonna go grab one of the garment bags from one of the closets and put the body in it so that there's no more bleeding on the floor. He's originally planning on dumping the body in the river and Ursula never knowing what's happening, but what he didn't account for was that Ursula in an earlier scene was being let out of work early so that she could meet up with Stan at an earlier time. She then calls Leon asking if he knew where Stan was because he's not answering her at all. Leon comes up with this bullshit story that Stan called him saying he couldn't make the date because a friend was sick and he needed to take care of him, instead of calling Ursula and telling her directly about it. She inevitably agrees to come back and have dinner with Leon. When she starts to grill him about it, he continues to lie. Eventually, she starts hearing the beeping from the watch that she gave Stan earlier. Because he hadn't accounted for her coming home early, Leon had gone ahead and put Stan's body in the firewood in order to hide it from her until he had time to go and dump the body. What Leon failed to realize in his rush to clean up the blood off the carpet and get rid of the body for the time being so she doesn't see it, he completely forgot about the watch, which had fallen off of Stan and had gone under one of the tables in that room. Ursula realizes that this is the beep coming from the watch she gave Stan and starts looking for him, inevitably finding a wet spot on the floor that just doesn't belong there. At that point, 2 and 2 becomes 4 in her head and she goes, oh my god, what did Leon do to Stan? She confronts Leon when he comes back into the room, and Leon goes on about this stupid story about how he called Stan over and he left the room, and when he came back, Stan had fallen over and hit his head on something and it was all Pin's fault, which she doesn't fucking believe. After she leaves in hysterics and he starts talking to Pin, Ursula comes back with an axe and we see her swing it at something before the scene just cuts. At this point, I was going, holy shit, she killed Leon, and that was further reinforced when the next scene had paramedics and police officers. However, there's a little bit of a twist. We find out that Stan is still alive in the pile of wood and is revived. The very last scene in this movie completely ties in everything that was happening with Leon and with the very beginning of the kids looking at whatever or whoever was standing in the window of that house. Ursula returns to the house and runs into what definitely is a nurse that we can only assume is caring for someone in that house, which means that Leon isn't dead. This is confirmed when she goes to Leon's room and starts talking to Pin. At first, I went, wait, that doesn't make any sense. What did she attack with the axe? All these questions that I've been having are answered in this very last scene because the camera pans over to who she's talking to, assumedly Pin, and it's Leon in Pin's outfit, completely still like he's the anatomy doll, talking in Pin's voice. Holy shit, that just tells me that 1, Pin got fucked up with that axe, and 2, having Pin get fucked up with the axe completely broke Leon's psyche to the point where he and Pin combined to where Pin is the only one left in his body. After reviewing this movie and looking at its totality and what it is, I can't say that I actually like it at all because holy shit, it's fucked up in so many ways. I wasn't very happy that I was proved right at the very beginning when I said, hey, this family is fucking psychotic because look at what they're doing. Because we start with the parents being absolutely manipulative to the point where it's abusive and mentally destructive, to the kids being exposed to sexual shit early, to the kids being convinced at first that Pin is real, to the point where Leon literally believes it, only to find out that the dad was using ventriloquism the whole time, and then when the father comes in on Leon talking to Pin without him using the actual ventriloquism, he knows immediately that his son has lost his mind and tries to get rid of the source. Obviously, he ended up dead for it, but that was when we really could tell something was very wrong with Leon. We get that first hint that he's using ventriloquism when his sister goes, how did you do that? In one of the scenes that I showed. We also started to get an idea partway through the movie, just after that particular scene, when we see Ursula looking at books in the library. I didn't bring it up because I didn't want to ruin the ending, but halfway through the movie, just after the scene of her going, how did you learn how to do that? She's in the library looking at books about schizophrenia and mental health issues because she knew at that point Leon was an undiagnosed schizophrenic and she didn't know how to handle that. This is further reinforced with the scene of Stan telling Ursula that Leon needs to go to a mental hospital because he's showing signs of schizophrenia. He's not mentally okay. He's a danger to her and anybody that comes near him. We also get the exact reason why Leon is so upset whenever Ursula makes any kind of step to get away from him and have her own life, because he's in love with her. He wants her for himself. That was made abundantly clear with the reading of his poetry that basically went over how the main character is struggling with the idea of raping his sister. In his brain, this is just one big abusive relationship, and he wants to keep it as long as he possibly can. So there you have it. That is Pin in a nutshell. And holy fuck. Unless you've got a strong stomach, I do not suggest watching this movie. It is a fucking slow-burning car crash that just keeps going and going and going and getting worse and worse and worse. I can't handle that kind of mental and emotional roller coaster again. This has been your dose of 80s Cinema Carnage. I'm True Horror Stories, and I'll see you in the next review.